Thumbelina. Once there was an old woman who lived in a beautiful cottage, and she tended her beautiful garden. Her garden was immaculate, so orderly, so fruitful, so wonderful. But the old woman was alone, felt lonely. And so she went to a witch and asked the witch to help her so that her loneliness, she might find someone. The witch thought for a moment and gave her a bag of seeds and said, plant these wildflower seeds somewhere in your garden where they can get a lot of light and a lot of water, and your wishes will come true. So the old woman did just this, planted them in a corner where they received lots of light and water, tended the seeds daily, and soon the seeds sprouted into flowers, beautiful flowers. The flowers smelled so delicious that the old woman one day bent down and touched her nose to a flower, the blossom right there, and suddenly the blossom opened and there was a little girl. The old woman thought, this little girl is so beautiful but so tiny. She's no larger than my thumb, so I will call her Thumbelina. Now, Thumbelina became her daughter. Although Thumbelina never grew up, Thumbelina remained very small. The old woman was very happy. And Thumbelina spoke and sang beautiful songs. Again, the old woman was very happy. But one day a frog noticed little Thumbelina, because Thumbelina used to love to basically float on the water, a pond, really it was just a small puddle, in her little shell that was a boat, and she would use 2 blades of grass as oars. The frog saw her there and thought, she's so beautiful, I want to make her my wife. So the frog waited for a time when the old woman went inside to fix some lemonade, and then the frog leaped, grabbed little Thumbelina, and fled with Thumbelina. Down, down, down the stream, down, down, down the stream. Now, in this story, the seasons are very important. Spring, summer, fall, winter. They are the essence of the story, really. So, poor Thumbelina, when the frog left her there for a moment, cried bitterly because she didn't want to be the wife of this frog, and she wept and wept. The fish of the pond, or of the stream, took pity on her and nibbled away at the stem. Oh, that's right, the frog left her on a lily pad flat. Lily pads are connected by a stem to something, and so the fish nibbled at the stem, and the lily pad, thus liberated, floated downstream, far from the frog. Floated downstream and finally came to rest on the banks of a meadow. Thumbelina saw that it was a meadow, didn't recognize it, but she thought, at least here I'm safe. So it was still summer, and she made herself a little nest, and by day she would, if she was thirsty, she drank some dew from flowers or grass. If she was hungry, she ate some clover. She arranged a daisy over her head to protect her against bad weather, and generally she was okay. But then the weather started to change, and the weather became cooler. Autumn. Here comes autumn. The flowers were fading, the leaves were fading, and the weather was getting colder. She needed a blanket. Every day she would wander around, hoping to find some sign of her mother, the old woman, because she longed very much to return to her mother. Okay, one day she found a hole in the ground, a burrow. She peeked inside, as if to say, is anyone here? Because if no one had been there, then maybe this could have been her shelter for the autumn and even winter. A field mouse was there, a female field mouse, who was very lonely. And Field Mouse invited little Thumbelina in and said, "Come, sit by the fire and I'll give you some tea." So Thumbelina came in, sat by the fire, started telling stories of her adventures and singing songs. The Field Mouse loved her, loved having her with her, and invited her to stay for the autumn and winter. And so together this was a second mother for her. Together they were very close. They worked together. The Field Mouse would cook. Thumbelina would gather whatever was needed for food, and singing and cleaning, and they spent a wonderful time together. During the winter, one day they found outside a sparrow. The sparrow had a broken wing and was freezing to death, was almost dead. They decided, especially Thumbelina, to bring the sparrow inside. They, with difficulty, because the sparrow was much bigger, pulled the sparrow inside, and Thumbelina nursed the sparrow back to health. The Field Mouse gave the sparrow tea and food. Thumbelina especially stitched the broken wing back together, and the three creatures then spent the winter together in great harmony and great love and peace. Three females, notice. Okay. Then came spring, and the sparrow thought, "I must be on my way. My wing is mended thanks to you, Thumbelina, and to you, Field Mouse, but I must be on my way." Thumbelina said, "I wish I could return to my mother. Field Mouse has been wonderful for me, but I long to see my mother again." Sparrow said, "I will help you. Climb on my back." So Thumbelina said goodbye to the Field Mouse. This was the end of their harmonious existence together. But Thumbelina climbed on the back, and Sparrow went into the air, looking everywhere for Thumbelina's home. They spent nights together on the ground, but they were safe. They kept each other warm. It was a very wonderful relationship. And there's something magical about this sparrow. The next day, let's say, they were flying, and Thumbelina thought she recognized the land below. But the sparrow instead flew into the forest and landed somewhere where there was a thicket. And Thumbelina got off the sparrow's back. The sparrow said, "Don't worry. Don't be afraid. Everything will be okay." And then the sparrow left. Thumbelina was left there, and there was a flower, a lily, in fact. Thumbelina looked at the lily, and suddenly the lily opened, and out came a little creature, the same size as Thumbelina, but this creature had feathers, wings, very thin gauze-like wings, and a crown on his head. And he announced he was the prince. And he said, "You are so kind, you are so beautiful, I want you to be my princess and to stay with me forever." Out of the flowers, out of the thicket, came many other little creatures, and they all were loving and kind, and the prince said, "Stay with me forever, stay with us forever. Here it is always summer, never fall and winter. Everything will be wonderful." Thumbelina said, "But I long to see my mother again. Will you let me see my mother?" "Sure, let's go see her." So they went to see Mother. Mother was still living. And then comes this very confusing ending, because they stay there telling Mother stories, the three of them together, apparently. But this means that they stay there where the seasons change. And they don't stay where the seasons don't change. This means if we are people, seasons change. Winters come, death comes. To stay with the old woman meant to stay where there was death. To leave the old woman meant to live in the prince's magical land where there is no death, where it's always summer. I'd say the ending of the story is a little unclear. Which did they choose? But it's a nice story.